Meeting is now streaming live on YouTube, apparently. Hurrah! Hello, I'm Jeremy Nicholas, and this is the After Dinner Show. And I've got some guests with me. Alan Stevens joins us from East London. Fantastic shirt, Alan. How are you doing?
Thank you very much indeed. I'm lovely. Thank you.
Lovely. And we've got Peter Edge joining us from... Hey. Oh. Hang on, sorry, I realised I'd got the YouTube channel open on my laptop, so it was all coming back to me and I thought I was being heckled. So we've got Alan with a lovely shirt. He's in East London. Peter Edge is somewhere near Liverpool in a library by the looks of him. Peter, hello.
Yeah, I'm in a library. They're on every street corner in Liverpool, as you might expect.
Yes, they are. Well, you need something for fuel. And Michelle Mills-Porter is somewhere near Birmingham with a name that I can't even say. Where are you, Michelle?
I'm Cofton Hackett at the foot of the Lickey Hills.
Fantastic. Cofton Hackett. That's a very appropriate name at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah. It does sound like a disease, doesn't it?
Yeah. Right. So all of us are professional speakers and none of us have any speaking work in public at the moment because of the old coronavirus. So I just thought, let's all get together and tell some stories. So let me just run through the rules. First of all, the stories have to be true. They have to be told from personal experience, and you have to have had your dinner. So let's just check. Michelle, have you had your dinner and what did you have?
I have. I had some posh beans on toast. So I've got baked beans and I put in some chili oil, bit of Parmesan, you know, that kind of stuff. That's what I had, yes.
Fantastic. What have you had, Peter?
Just boring old spaghetti bolognese, but I managed to avoid getting it up my front. So I think I've done pretty well so far. I'm on a winner.
Fantastic. And Alan, what have you had?
I had chili con carne made by my lovely wife Heather with some very hot chips, and I've spilt it all over me, unfortunately, as you can see.
Yes, that's made a right mess. That was just a normal plain shirt.
Plain shirt when I started out.
Before you started with that. Peter, let's just clear up the mystery of your library behind you, because when you move your head around, it makes your ears go a bit funny.
Yeah.
So that's
it's a curse I've lived with for many years, these ears, you know. It's 30 years of playing number 8 at rugby, you know, you end up with ears like this. They have independent travel.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, can I just check everyone's got a drink? I have got some fine Balvenie whiskey. Now, one nice thing that's come out of the whole coronavirus thing is that our neighbourhood, we now have a WhatsApp group for all the 64 houses and flats in our thing. And Louise from number 25, I think it was, I don't even know, but put a thing in the WhatsApp group saying, I'll do a whiskey run tonight if you just put your glasses outside in your porch and I'll fill them with whiskey. And magically, at about 5 o'clock, they got filled with whiskey. And
sure it's whiskey?
Yeah, no, it is. It's Balvenie whiskey. It turns out she's the brand manager for it. So I feel like we've just...
Cheers to her.
Yeah. So she's got loads of it, and she drinks wine. She doesn't even, want the wit. So I've got this, and it's absolutely gorgeous. It feels like the first show we've ever done, and we've already got a sponsor. It's not a massive fee, just a glass of whiskey for me and for Jeanette, who's downstairs enjoying hers. Right, so let's kick off with a story then, shall we? Alan, do you want to kick us off with a story? The worst thing that's ever happened to you when speaking.
Okay, the worst thing that's ever happened to me. This happened in Oman. I was speaking at the Al Bustan Palace Hotel, a hotel we know well as professional speakers. A beautiful hotel, massive conference. It was an education conference, and I was the opening keynote speaker. I was asked to open the event. I was given a little bit of a script, but mostly it was stuff I'd written myself. And as we do, I was sitting in the front row, not really paying attention to the audience coming in. And I heard my name called, the MC came out. I walked up onto the stage, turned to face the audience of around about 1,000 local people in beautiful national dress, and realized that every single one of them was armed. And I mean, some of them quite seriously armed. All of them were carrying a dagger in their belt, which is an ornamental dagger, which is part of their national dress. So that was kind of scary. Worst of all was the front row. The two gentlemen in the middle of the front row weren't heavily armed. However, they were flanked by about 4 people on either side who had Kalashnikovs casually slung over their shoulder. And on the end of the row, I'm not absolutely certain about this, my memory fails me a little bit, it was about 10 years ago, but I am absolutely convinced that the two people on the end of the row were carrying rocket-propelled grenades, which they just sort of parked casually against their chairs. Now, I don't know about you, this was a bit unusual. I'm not used to this. I'm not used to an audience being tooled up before I've even started the event. But I pulled myself together. It was a bit of a shock. Pulled myself together. I started the speech, and I was probably about 5 minutes in when I just felt a little bit uneasy. The front row were twitchy, and I wasn't at all happy about what was going on. And suddenly, as one, they all stood up. Not only that, they removed their Kalashnikovs from their shoulders, and they held them at the ready position. And I'm convinced that all 8 of those guys were pointing a gun at my heart. And even the guys in my peripheral vision, the guys who were carrying the RPGs, I think they were leveling them at my head. Now, I don't know if you've ever been in this situation as a speaker, but I can tell you it's not a great place to be. So I did the only thing that I thought was sensible, and that is I froze. Didn't say a thing, I froze. I thought I've clearly said something offensive in Omani without even realizing that I'd done it. And I was about to apologize, and then the guys with the Kalashnikovs and the guys with the RPGs started walking towards the stage. There was a gap between the front row and the front of the stage, probably about 10 feet or so. They took 3 paces forward. So I did what you would have done under the same circumstances, and that is I took 3 paces back. Because obviously, knowing ballistics as I do, and I'm sure Peter knows this as well, the bullets aren't going to hurt you so much if you're that much further away. So
yeah, you're virtually safe, Alan, as long as you're
completely
just 3 paces back.
If I'm 3 paces back, and every time they take a pace forward, I take a pace back, I'm going to be fine. You know, that's all right.
That will definitely work. I've seen that in James Bond. That will
perfect.
work.
But you've seen it on stage. So I took 3 paces back. They stopped, and they took another pace forward. Naturally, I took another pace back. However, at this point, my right foot, which I just put behind me, encountered nothing at all, because I actually reached the back of the stage. And it seemed gradual to me because it all happened in slow motion, but I just disappeared into the black drapes at the back of the stage and fell off and disappeared completely from the 1,000-strong audience. It was a little bit embarrassing. I can't deny it. It was a little bit embarrassing. So I'm now lying there in the drapes, and I can see under the stage, I can see their feet under the front of the stage. And I'm thinking, as long as I stay here, I'm going to be fine. I then realized that the feet had turned through 90 degrees and they were marching away. So I kind of climbed up, and I looked over the stage, and I'm now looking across the stage to see all of them marching out of the room. The 4 guys with the Kalashnikovs, the 2 guys in the middle that weren't heavily armed, the 2 guys with the RPGs, they've all gone. And the organizer came running round to the back of the stage. He lifted me up onto the stage. I was a little bit disheveled. I won't deny that either. And he said, "I'm sorry, Alan, should have mentioned this." I thought, yeah, you should have done, really. I said, sort of under my voice, forgetting I'm still mic'd up. I said, "What?" I do apologize. I said, "What the F was all that about?" You know, which wasn't good because that was broadcast to the audience as well. And he said, "Well, the 2 gentlemen in the middle were the Minister of Education and the Minister of Defense. And they came to see the first few minutes of your speech as a gesture of friendliness. But they had to go to a cabinet meeting, so their bodyguards escorted them out. And what they were doing was a ceremonial departure. You know, that's what they do. They stand up, point their weapons in one direction, turn around and march out. No one had told me anything about this." So I managed to get up on stage. I managed to finish the rest of the speech. I've no idea how I did that. But ever since then, and this is a tip for any speakers that are out there, check the weapons in the audience before you go on stage. Ask the organizer, are there any weapons, any grenades, any bombs, any bullets, any knives that are liable to be in my line of vision? Because if so, I need to know in advance so I can prepare myself. So basically, that's about the worst thing that ever happened to me on stage. I'm still here, luckily, to tell the tale.
Great story. How awful, though. And just lucky you had your brown trousers on
It was,
help get you through that, wasn't it?
it was very
But
fortunate indeed.
I have it in my terms and conditions on my website when you book me. No grenades, rocket
That's
launchers.
in my contract now.
Yeah,
in my
and I
contract.
think
Yeah.
I think if there are any other professional speakers watching, insist on that in
Yeah.
your contract. Al, great story to kick us off, and very scary
Yeah.
for you because you're not used to big crowds. You're a Fulham fan, so you wouldn't.
I'm not used to excitement either.
Not used to excitement, are you, with Fulham?
No.
So there we are. I had the worst thing I ever did involve an event with the football crowd was the West Ham United end of season gala dinner, and I had to do the auction. It was Ben Shepherd from GMTV or whatever they call it now, the Piers Morgan one, and he was doing the hosting thing, and I had to do the auction. But West Ham had been relegated 3 days before, so nobody wanted to put their hands in their pocket. It was just the worst event ever. Let's come to Michelle. Michelle, do you want to kick us off with a story? It can be about anything as long as it's true.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I'm a bit of a buffoon. Stop! You're laughing already, Jem.
No. I thought, shall I disagree, or will it put her off when she's hardly started? You're not a buffoon.
No.
Well, I think okay. So I think that I'm at my funniest when I don't mean to be. Okay, and it's not just stuff I do for myself. It's stuff that I do with other people that end up being extremely funny. And there's one example that I can think of, which I think you've heard of before, and it's when I went to the log flume with my nieces, and that's all they wanted for their birthday. They wanted to go to this park, and they wanted to go on the log flume. And we queued for absolutely yonks, because it was one of those that you have to queue for ages, and you go up this staircase, and it was kind of inside. And when we got out at the top, we realized it was absolutely chucking it down. And we didn't have any umbrellas or coats or anything. And there was a vending machine right at the top, one of these vending machines that sell those plastic ponchos. So I remember my sister, she had some change, and she ran to this vending machine, and we were being ushered very quickly now into the car. And my sister was still struggling with this vending machine, and it was literally the last second that she managed to get these ponchos out, threw them at us, and we kind of pulled her into the log flume. And all my nieces were at the front, and then my mum, and then my sister, and then I was at the back. And the ride had started, so I grabbed my poncho and my sister, and I hadn't had a chance to get it on. Now, my nieces think that I'm a bit of a buffoon anyway, and I didn't want to add anything to that. So all the way through the ride, I was trying desperately to get this poncho out of the packet and onto my head. And every time I got anywhere near, we went to one of those drops. So I didn't have a chance. I was kind of grabbing onto the handlebars, and I could see the headlines, woman falls out of log flume because she's trying to get a poncho on. So I was holding on for dear life. And it was right at the end of the ride. It has that last great big kind of crescendo where they take the pictures and everything. And it was at the top of there, and I thought, I'm going to get absolutely soaked at the bottom. This is my last chance to get the poncho on. So I tore the packet open with my teeth, and I pulled it on, and I managed to just get it over my head before it went over the top. So I'm like, grabbed onto the rail in front, plummet down, and this poncho on my head inflated with air. And I remember thinking, what do I do? What do I do? And I was holding on for dear life, thinking, please don't fall out. And all the while I was thinking, thank God my nieces are in front, because they can't see what an idiot I'm making of myself. So I thought I styled it out, and I thought I got away with it. I pulled the poncho off, and I climbed out of the log flume. I was going, oh, wasn't that fun? And then we tried to exit, and it was all fine until suddenly we got to this bottleneck. And I didn't understand what this bottleneck was. And then I realized as I approached, the bottleneck was by the photo booth. And what if all these kids and parents alike were beating their fists on the floor in hysterical laughter, pointing at this photo, and I just had this dread. I just knew it was going to be me. And my nieces are like, we want a photo, it's our birthday, we want a photo. And I was thinking, oh my God, we got to the photo booth, and sure enough, the picture that everyone was laughing at was me with this massive inflated poncho on my head, looking just ridiculous, and it was caught exactly at the right time by the camera. So the official photograph was, you know, my nieces, my mum, my sister, and me with this huge inflated poncho on my head. So.
Good Lord. You haven't got that picture by any chance, have you?
Mm.
You have, haven't you?
on,
Go on. Have you got it? What?
You've
I
got
have. Shall I share my screen?
Yeah, just open the picture on your screen and then just share that image.
I have to share screens in order to do it.
Right, okay.
There you go.
Make sure that...
Did you see it?
That is good.
There you go.
Oh my goodness.
There
Look
you
at
go.
that. That's dreadful.
On fours. There's my nieces in the front, my mum and my sister, and then me with this huge thing on the top of my head.
It
Okay.
just looks
Stop
like a
sharing
ghost.
right now.
That's good.
Yes, that's very good. And if anyone would like copies of that, how would they go about getting it? Sure.
Just send £12.99 plus VAT to me, check or postal order, and you'll get your copy, no problem at all.
Yes, and her address is
That'll
Michelle
make a
Mills
great
Porter.
backdrop for you, Peter.
Yeah.
That would good, wouldn't it? Yeah, that would be a cracking image to have in the backdrop. And just put Michelle Mills Porter, Lickey Hills, and that will find you, won't it?
Yeah, just around the corner from Lickey End.
Just around the corner from Lickey End. That's where she lives. that is a terrible one. Right, let's go to Peter Edge then. Peter, now you're a former detective. How long were you in the police force?
Just under 31 years.
31 years, and was that the Liverpool police?
Yeah,
Was it
Merseyside, yeah, all over Liverpool.
Yeah,
various
yeah. And
roles.
what sort of policeman were you then?
A bit of everything, really. A lot of time in the CID as a detective. A lot of vice, a lot of drugs, as you can see. And then towards the end of my career, more uniform based. I was head of training for a while. Coordinated party conferences, you know, the political party conferences when they started coming to Liverpool. So we had the Liberal Democrat Party in 2010 when they became a party of government. They'd never had a policed conference before, and then the Labour Party in 2011.
Okay, so you must have loads of good stories. I know you do, or you used to be an after-dinner speaker back in the days when we were allowed out before the lockdown. Give us one of your stories from the police.
Right. Well, the story I was going to share takes me back to 1985, and I was a young detective constable in the drug squad in Merseyside, and the date's relevant, and I'll explain that in a little while. But we'd just finished this major drugs operation. We'd been going for about 3 or 4 months following this target and all his team. And the strike day arrived, and we arrested him sort of in flagrante, in possession of drugs, in possession of money, all this sort of stuff. In fact, in possession of a gun as well, which in 1985 was a fairly rare find. And of course, because we'd been surveilling him for about 3 or 4 months, we had a whole list of other premises that he'd visited along the way. And so we had to sort of mop these up and decide whether they were relevant or not. And so we split into a load of different teams, all armed with search warrants, and off we went. And the team I was with went to a house in Walton, which is an area of North Liverpool. And we arrived at the house, and it's in darkness, and it's one of those when you're absolutely sure there's no one there. You can tell there's no sign of life whatsoever. Now the relevance of the date is it was 1985. Which is the next year on from the introduction of the Police and Criminal Evidence Act 1984, which changed dramatically the way the police executed search warrants, search for evidence, all that sort of thing. And so we went to the house next door in a bid to get the neighbour to come and witness the search. That was one of the recommendations in the Code of Practice. So we go next door where there are signs of life, knock on the door. The front door opens, and standing there is a fellow called Freddie Tyrrell. That's not actually his real name, but it's close. And Freddie is a villain. He's a lovable rogue, but he's a villain. And he's what we would have called at the time a top jockey. And that meant that he could nick just about anything with wheels on. And he could outstrip just about any police driver, way before we had helicopters, all of that sort of stuff. And the look of shock on his face was something to behold. And we said, Freddie, you're going to have to come with us. He says, I've done nothing, mate. I've done nothing. I said, well, no, Freddie, you're not getting locked up. We just need you to come next door with us and witness a search. So mightily relieved that he wasn't getting arrested, he was very keen to join us. So he walks next door with us. And so we're just getting the big hammer ready, just ready to put the door in. And he says, hang on, that's a decent door, that. Jumps over the fence. 20 seconds later, he opens the front door from the inside, which perhaps wasn't the way we should have done it. But in fairness, we meant we didn't have to pay for any damage. So we go in and we're searching this house. We put half the team upstairs, half the team downstairs. And about 20 minutes into the search, we get a call from upstairs. Sarge, found something. So we all troop upstairs with Freddie into the back bedroom. And there, these two detectives have pulled back the carpet. And in the floorboards, there's a hatch, a square hatch cut out of the floorboards. And so we all gather around this hatch, and the two lads lever up the hatch with a crowbar, pull it to one side, and inside there's a black bin bag. And so very carefully, with gloved hands, they peel back the opening of the bin bag to reveal, in cash, £80,000. Now, in 1985, £80,000 was an awful lot of money, and we had never seen anything like this. And so we're all stood there in this little semicircle round this hole, including Freddie, looking down in shock, totally silenced. And after about 20 seconds, Freddie looks up and he meets everybody's eye. And he says, I won't say nothing if you don't. Needless to say, the cash got booked in. Took them nearly 24 hours to count it, because in those days they didn't have the machines. But the look of disappointment on Freddie's face to realise that he'd been living next door to an empty house with 80 grand under the floorboards. The poor lad was killing himself. He really was.
Yeah, no.
God, crikey. Great story. Well, thanks for sharing all of those. I want to share with you one of my disaster stories, and it's in this time when we're all in the lockdown. I'm having to do things I don't normally do, and one of them is make my own bread. So I've got the bread maker out of the garage. He was very relieved. He'd been living in there for the last 10 years. And I said, no, your family will have to stay in there. So I invited the bread maker into the kitchen, and I put a ready mix, proper mix from a proper packet and everything with a bit of yeast, put it in the bread maker, spun it round, and I wasn't that impressed with, I've got it here, I'm going to show it to you. It didn't rise quite as much as I thought it might do. So that is the front end view of it. It's not great, is it?
Is that the finished
Yorkshire
loaf?
pudding.
Yeah.
Is that it? Okay.
That's it. Yeah. So
It's like a
you
big
can see
croissant.
that's where the bread maker. But it's that should be about up like that, shouldn't it? And it's
It would be up like that if it was a Yorkshire pudding.
it looks like. It looks a bit like Prince Charles's ear, doesn't it? I think.
I'm one of my ears in a minute.
Yeah. So I think the mix was probably all right. But my quick yeast, it turns out the date on it is used by 2018, April 2018. So I think yeast does get a bit tired, doesn't it? I've been feeling a bit tired.
Because it's live. Yeast is live, isn't it? It's died. Your yeast.
Yeah. And I don't know if you can hear this, but this is how light it is. Are you going to get the sound of that?
That's a bread sound effect. That's brilliant.
And it literally, I made it last night and overnight. And when I woke up this morning, lovely smell. I went down, and that is what greeted me. What things has everyone been doing differently in the lockdown? Just share a few things about that.
Well, I'll share a story about my wine then.
Go on then.
Normally, I do like a sparkling red. It's my favourite. I love a sparkling red. And it's quite expensive, a tenner a bottle, which is quite expensive for a cheap girl like me. And I can't really get a hold of any. So what I've done is this is an old trick that I saw on a news programme many years ago, and I got this very cheap old bottle of Merlot, and I put it through my soda stream, and it's magnificent.
Brilliant.
Can't tell the difference. Gorgeous.
That's like adult Blue Peter, isn't it?
Yeah, it's perfect.
It was a news program. What they do is they took
You heard it here first.
out onto the street, and they put it through a soda stream and they passed it off with champagne, and they asked everyone in the street, which do you prefer? And they all preferred the Blue Nun.
So there's some late night clubs in London do that, and they charge about 50 quid a glass for it too.
I'm just wondering whether you could pass Jem's bread through the soda stream.
That's an idea.
Could do something with that.
I think it's on redemption, that one.
But just with my ex-BBC head on, just a word of warning: in this crisis, please do not take a Blue Nun outside. It's not fair to her, is it? Not with everything that's going on.
It's not clever.
So do you see how he nicked my gag from off air and did that?
Yeah. No, in the green room earlier, the green screen room earlier, Alan did sort of a joke like that, but I've adapted it.
You've adapted it a little.
Yeah. And made it into a proper joke.
I've got a story about nicking gags.
So shall I tell you what happened to us the other day? We're trying to support local businesses. And we've got a great little coffee shop called Tippy Coffee. They're great. They only opened about 6 months ago and they're great. So we're trying to support them. And they've launched a delivery service. So we thought we'll order some stuff for them. We got on their website. We ordered eggs, some bread, sourdough, of course, because we're that kind of people. We order sourdough bread, better than that thing that you showed it, and a little bit of milk. And they said we'll come round. We'll leave it on your doorstep. We'll ring the bell. You can pay digitally. That's fine. And then everything will be good. And then the next day, around about midday, our doorbell rang, and we thought that's the stuff. And we went out, and there, sure enough, sitting on the doorstep was a brown carrier bag with the milk and the bread and the eggs, and sitting next to it was a Siamese cat with a collar with a little pink bow tie on it. It's beautiful, lovely collar, and it's called Raymond. The cat, not the collar. The cat.
Yeah.
Cat's called Raymond. I don't know what.
That's not a cat's name, is it? Raymond.
Really? It's called Raymond. Yeah. It was on the collar, and I thought that is service that's gone beyond. To actually get not a person but a Siamese cat to deliver a kind of food parcel, I thought, well, that's what we're about these days, isn't it? That level of
Ram couldn't top that.
Extraordinary. So I wrote a TripAdvisor report. Brilliant.
Yeah, Raymond certainly delivers. One of my sisters always tells the story about this woman in a park who was just shouting into the bushes, "Jonathan, come out of there! Jonathan, come out! Jonathan, will you come here?" And then a little dog came out, and that was the dog's name, Jonathan. And
that's not a dog's name, is it?
Well, that's what made me think
Raymond's
of it.
Not a cat.
Raymond's not a cat's name, is it?
No,
they need to have.
No.
Have you got a story about nicking jokes, Peter, or is that something that you're thinking about? You'd probably better not say.
No. I was speaking at a dinner at a reasonably prestigious rugby club up here, and the guest of honour, it was about 2004, and the guest of honour was one of the 2003 World Cup winning team, who was sat next door but one to me on the top table. And about halfway through my speech, I caught some movement out my eye. I noticed that he was writing down all my material. So I just stopped. I held my hand up and said, "Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, the International World Cup winning rugby player doesn't seem to have enough material of his own, so we could just wait a few minutes while he catches up with mine."
Ooh.
He was very sheepish, very sheepish.
You've told me before, Alan, about people at the comedy store.
I've got a joke story at the comedy store, but
yes.
If I tell it, I might die because the person's still around.
Yeah, but I remember you telling me that, and he was quite a sort of high person up in politics.
He's quite a well-known person. Yes,
person in the political thing that was basically writing down all the stuff. And you said to him, "You shouldn't really be doing that," and he went, "Oh, don't worry, everyone does it," didn't he?
That's right. And in the green room at the comedy store, what happened was that he was manhandled. His notes were taken and flushed down the toilet, and he very nearly followed. But he managed to get away with it. I wonder who that could have been. Alistair Campbell. I wonder who that could have been.
Say it. Don't say it. Don't say it.
I didn't say it.
Wow, that's very good. Well, I said we'd do about half an hour, and we've done about half an hour. I think that's been really lovely having you all on. I'll just tell people who's on, because we're going to do this again on Monday, when my guests will be Stuart Harris from East Kilbride and Penny Haslam. Where's Penny from? Sort of somewhere
Yorkshire.
Up north.
Lim.
Is it Lim?
Lim.
You can't just make
Warrington.
Lim.
Yeah.
Lim. It's no good just making up names. It has to be proper names of places.
L-Y-double-M. Lim.
Yeah, no, that's just an anagram of something.
Place.
Where is Lim near Warrington? Is it?
It's just outside Warrington. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, I think Yeah. So we've got Stuart
It's
and
up
Penny.
north.
Yeah.
It's yeah. In fact, I'm a little
Isn't
bit
there an
north heavy.
interchange? Isn't
Is
there a
there?
limb interchange? Oh, there should be.
There's Lynn Truck Stop, which is
Oh,
where
yeah.
the M56 joins
Yeah.
the M6.
Well, it must be a lovely place if the best thing about it is it's got an interchange.
That's about it. Yeah.
Better than
when
a
people-
gyratory system.
It's
Or
when
a
people
truck stop. That's where Peter does most of his comedy gigs, isn't it, Peter?
truck stops. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or when people talk about
the.
when they talk about the Epping-Ongar shuttle, and I always think it sounds like they're swearing. Oh, that Epping-Ongar shuttle. But there we go. And we've got Heather Wright coming on Wednesday. Victoria Wood look-alike, and from somewhere north, isn't she? But she's very funny, and
Yeah,
she'll
you've
be
got a
good.
northern influence here.
Yeah, a bit too many northern. I probably need to get a few more southerners on.
Get some softy southerners like me on. Come on.
Yeah. Well, it was all looking a bit Londony until we got a Midlander and a Northerner on. So anyway, thank you very much for sharing this. If you want to find out more about these guys on the YouTube channel, I'll put their websites, because you might, heaven knows, maybe in a year's time when this has all died down, you might want to book some of these people to come and speak at your events. So thank you very much, Michelle, Alan and Peter. That has been the After Dinner Show. I've been Jeremy Nicholas. Thank you very much for joining us. Bye. Enjoy your evening.
Bye.
Bye, bye,
Thanks,
bye,
Jan.
bye, bye, bye.